January has been a really busy month in Eurovision season, and as a result, it's easy for something to pass you by. For that reason, in case you've missed this month's plagiarism scandal, couldn't face sitting through 5 hours of the Malta Eurovision Song Contest, or simply want to relive every trauma of the past 31 days, we're going to quickly go through all the headlines so that you're completely caught up. Quickly before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to check out my Patreon in the description to get videos a day early. This is my full-time job, so any and all support is very much appreciated. Now it's time to speed through a huge amount of news in a very short time, starting with the general and then moving on to some specific national selections. Firstly, Eurovision is going on tour. This is a one-off special event for the contest's 70th anniversary and is going to be held in 12 venues all across Western Europe. If you're in the Balkans or the Baltics, sorry, you're out of luck. Better luck next time. 10 artists are going to be taken from this year's grand final, and if they're chosen, they are obligated to take part, along with a certain number of icon acts and a few local acts to each venue as well. The icon acts announced are Alessandra, Guy Sebastian, Helena Paparazou, Johnny Logan, Katrina from Katrina and the Waves, Lordi, and Verka Suduchka. The Eurofan pre-sale started this morning at the time of recording, which means we're starting to get our first indications of whether this huge gamble is going to pay off. Judging by the ticket prices, I'm not thinking things are looking great right now, but I have an entire video on the subject on this channel if you want to hear more about it. Secondly, we now know who the hosts are for the shows in May. It's these two, and there's not really anything to analyze here, but here they are. Finally, in main contest news, the semi-final draw has happened, and originally I was planning to make a video on this. The reason I haven't is that every analysis I've seen shows that nobody has really been massively positively or negatively impacted, so it just wasn't really worth it to tell you that everyone had a 5% more or less chance of qualifying when we don't know any songs. In any case, feel free to pause the video and look now, because here is semi-final 1 and here is semi-final 2. Now to get to individual countries, and if you've been around in Eurovision long enough, you might remember these guys. Well, they're back, and they're representing Georgia at Eurovision this year. In my video ranking every single Eurovision 2025 song, I was briefly gifted the power of prophecy because I said that Georgia should just send them this year, and here they are. They kind of soft-launched this announcement already, given that bzikebi were in fact the interval act for Junior Eurovision in Tbilisi in December. But apparently the song they'll be performing at Eurovision isn't the one that they performed then. Given it's been 18 years, this is naturally a very different group now. But it would be hilarious if the first ever winner of both Junior and Senior Eurovision was these guys. There were also some national selections this month, and the first one we're going to talk about is Moldova. I was there to see this happen, and there is a full video on this channel if you'd like to find out more about this. The comments under it are saying that it's one of our best videos, and it's one that I'm really proud of, so please do go and watch it if you haven't already. The winner there, by a historic landslide, was Satoshi with his song Viva Moldova. It was blatantly obvious to everyone in the room that this was the song that should win, and the one that most accurately captures the current mood of Moldova, especially among younger people. This got 15 times as many votes as second place from the public, and as far as we know, that is proportionally the biggest landslide in Eurovision history. Comment below if you find a bigger one, but we haven't managed yet. If you didn't watch the selection, Satoshi's live performance is of course worth a look again, and you should probably also listen to Pink Margarita by Catalina Solomak and Doina by Diana, but with the latter two, probably better to go for the studio versions. The Moldovan selection may have dramatically improved this year, but these two just didn't quite sit right on stage. Also, Catalina's vocal was a bit all over the place, but she is 18, so we'll let her off. On the same night, we had the ultra marathon that was the Malta Eurovision Song Contest, and it took them 4 hours and 11 minutes to complete a 12-song show. That is longer than the actual contest in May. We ended up with a top two that essentially had twice as many points as anyone below them, and those were both repeat fixtures of this selection in the form of Aiden and Matt Black. Matt Black won the televote with a pretty ridiculous score of 200, and for comparison, Miriana Conte last year scored 94 to win it, but basically nobody voted for anyone else other than either him or Aiden, except for the few people who voted for the guy who came third. That meant that Aiden's jury victory combined with 170 from the public got him over the line with his extremely overdramatic song Bella. Given Malta's chronic inability to do well with the public at Eurovision, this won't threaten high up the scoreboard in May, but it should do pretty well with the juries. Fast forward a week and we get to the Luxembourgish national selection, and that's where our first plagiarism scandal of the year is coming from. The winner in that show was Eva Maria, but this one is actually not fully settled yet. In the time since, it's been reported that both the broadcaster and the artist, in collaboration with the relevant rights authorities, are investigating similarities between this song and Birdie's Keeping Your Head Up. I'll let you judge for yourself for a moment. We've had storms in teacups like this before at Eurovision, and they usually don't amount to anything. That said though, the results for this show were so all over the place that if in the end the song was withdrawn, we'd end up with Steve Hey I Am a Dog Castile at Eurovision instead. That would be a big win for furries, but a big loss for Luxembourg, who would almost certainly be condemned to a semi-final exit. That said, I think that's probably what they're getting anyway. Our last national selection of the month didn't choose a song, but rather just an artist, and that was over in Bulgaria. We'll be revisiting this one in a month's time when they choose the song, and that does mean that because they choose both in a really roundabout way, it does technically still qualify as a national selection. Unsurprisingly, it was the most prominent artist in the show that won, and that was Dara. When I wrote this script, that was the end of it. However, since then, she has threatened to withdraw because she's been receiving unpleasant comments online. Time will tell whether we end up with someone else, and I have to rewrite this hours before the video releases tomorrow. Personally, I hope she stays because she seems like she has an interesting vibe. After filming Editing Gabe here, I somehow forgot to mention the fact that 1.5 million or so votes were cancelled because they were cast from Asia, so someone was trying to rig this show. Anyway, moving on. Switzerland has also internally selected an artist this month in the form of Veronica Fusaro. Her vibe seems to be quite different to the last few artists who've represented the country at Eurovision. Veronica makes the kind of indie pop that's quite difficult to translate to the contest. But given just how good Switzerland has been over the last 5 years, I'm sure they have something up their sleeves. Veronica must have something special planned, otherwise she probably wouldn't have won this selection. We also had semi-finals and song releases for so many national selections that going through them all would be a complete nightmare, and it would take ages. So instead, I'm just going to highlight some of the ones that I think are making the biggest waves at the moment, and some of the places I think you should be looking for potential big hitters. The most obvious ones to begin with are the ones I talked about last week in the form of Norway and Finland. Norway is mostly notable for not being very good this year, but having the return of former winner Alexander Rybak, sorry for pronouncing his name wrong in the last video, and Finland, meanwhile, has understood the assignment better than ever. You should listen to all 7 of the songs there, but if you only have time for 1 or 2, then those should be Linda Lampenius and Peter Parkkonen with their song Liekinheiten, and then secondly, Antti Palanen with the song Takatuka. Because that has throat singing in it, it's going to be in my heart forever. We also had songs from Ukraine, and I'll be covering that show in detail this Friday. This is a totally unique selection in Europe for many different reasons. Not least that it continues to take place in a secret location to keep it safe from being targeted by ongoing Russian attacks. This year, it additionally takes place in the midst of a deep freeze in Kiev, precipitated by the deliberate targeting of civilian energy infrastructure by the Russian army. Every Vidbia since 2022 has been meaningful, but this year it feels more important than ever. The 3 favourites are previous Eurovision participants in the form of Jerry Hale and Monokate, who was previously part of Goe, along with Leleka, who hasn't been in the contest before. These are the 3 I'm going to be focusing on in that video on Friday, and hopefully there'll be a special guest too. In Croatia, the very similarly named Lelek seem to be the ones who are the clear favourites at the moment, having not been too far away last year. Their song Andromeda is definitely worth a listen, but I also want to highlight Zevin, who has probably produced the best lyric of the year. I don't think we're going to see anything which is funnier than I am Balkan, don't you see? You don't want to mess with me. I got brothers, I got sisters, they all work in Germany. Greece seems to have a clear favourite at the moment as well, and that is Ferto by Akilas. I'll probably be analysing this show after it takes place, so keep an eye out for that. Ferto is, all else aside, completely unhinged, a critique of capitalism, and for those 2 reasons, I'm both terrified and curious to see how he's going to perform this. Evangelia is back as well, and Greek Eurofans seem to be once again unimpressed with what she's brought. Over in Latvia, we've already had the first semi-final of the selection, and currently everything is pointing towards a choice between Kaukkaili, who are good, and Emilia, who is boring. Unfortunately though, she's also the highest profile name in the competition, and that makes her a clear favourite to win. How this pans out will probably define my relationship with this country for years to come, but in the meantime, you should go and watch Kaukkaili's performance because they have some of the most innovative staging that we've seen in a national selection for a long time. Artists are now out in Austria, Germany, and Poland, but not all of the songs are out yet. For that reason, I'm waiting to go into depth on them until they're all available. Right now, they're not. The same is true for Lithuania, where to date we've only had 2 of the 5 heats in that selection. That said, Atikin's Degante Gemele has been generating a lot of hype, so if you're going to listen to a song from that show, make it that one. In the last couple of days, there has also been some controversy around this selection too. That's because Atikin previously performed in Russian, worked with Russian artists, and it was a key part of his identity until the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. He has now issued a statement to the Lithuanian broadcaster, which reads as follows. Seeing what is happening on social media with my whole heart, I want to explain to everyone who am I, what happened, and why these discussions suddenly arose. I want to explain the situation regarding the current talks in the public space, myself clearly and without any other interpretations. I understand that a lot of questions and opinions popped up, so I want to speak on it publicly. My Eurovision song is not just a piece of music, it's a story about peace, love and hope. I came to this selection fairly, following all the rules with a song that reflects my current creative direction. I never supported and I do not support the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Yes, my music endeavours for a portion of time were tied to Russia. It happened until the start of the war in 2022 in a completely different context where many different musicians from different countries still did concerts there and worked with Russians. At the time, it was purely a music career decision that had no political or ideological context. He also remarks that at the time he was addicted to psychoactive substances, which impacted on his decisions. He then further states, when the war in Ukraine started, I clearly and publicly made my stance in support of Ukraine. It happened in a public space, not privately or quietly. Alongside that, at the time, I initiated and publicly announced fundraising for Ukraine that was meant for honest help. It was a conscious action to show what values I stand on, not with words, but with action. This is one, I think, for Ukrainians to decide on how they feel, but it is another instructive example of how many people, myself included, had a very large blind spot on Russia before 2022. Everyone who had connections to the country after 2014, and I include myself in that bracket, by now definitely should have done some reflection on this. In the meantime, the best way to respond to this now is by continuing to support Ukrainian-led fundraising efforts to defend them from Russia's aggression. For that reason, in the description below, you'll find a link to Monarchate, who's one of the artists in the selection's fundraiser for the organization Ziga's Poor. They're helping fundraise for equipment that saves lives on the ground. And I'd encourage you to contribute if you can. Moving forward, songs have also come out in Portugal and Denmark. And there's a narrative rapidly developing in both shows. In Denmark, that's the return of 2025 representative Sissal, who at the moment is a runaway favourite in the odds to win. Her song Infinity is very much along the same lines as Hallucination from last year, except now she's got the Swedish A-team to produce and write it with her. That includes some very familiar names in the forms of Jimmy Joker Thornfelt and Joy and Linnea Deb. In Portugal, it's a very different situation to Denmark. Nobody in the show wants to go to Eurovision, bar 1 or 2. To date, of the 16 participants, 13 have explicitly confirmed that they will not go to Eurovision if they win the show. And of the 3 remaining, 2 have said yes and 1 hasn't given an answer. Portugal's decision to participate in the contest alongside Israel was very, very unpopular amongst the creative community in the country, so it's no surprise that we're in this situation. Much like with the withdrawals we had in Norway, you can find out more about them in my video about that selection from last week, it's entirely understandable that artists at this time would not want to participate on moral grounds alongside Israel. And this just goes to show how Israel's continued participation doesn't just damage the main contest, it damages the domestic offerings which are able to be put forward by the public service broadcasters in each country. There are a great many ways in which this one could end up in chaos, given the possibility that nobody who wants to go to Eurovision could qualify for the final. I doubt we've heard the last of this, and so we'll be watching what progresses in Portugal all through February. That concludes a very brief tour of most of the things that have happened in the Eurovision world this month. This kind of video is a new one for the channel, so please do comment if you think it's worth continuing, and if so, I'll do them again in February and March. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. For now though, thank you as always for watching, take care, and I'll see you in a few days' time.